Deep in the Redwood National Forest of Northern California, where ancient trees stretch toward the sky like cathedral spires and morning mist dances through groves that have stood for millennia, there existed a place unlike any other, the Harmony Wildlife Research Station. Nestled among towering sequoias and Douglas firs, this unique facility was home to one of the most unusual animal research programs in North America. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had established the station 15 years earlier after completing her groundbreaking doctoral thesis on interspecies communication at Stanford University. Unlike traditional animal research facilities that focused on individual species, Harmony Station was designed to study how different animals could form unexpected bonds and communicate across species barriers. The 500-acre facility was home to rescued and rehabilitated animals that couldn't be returned to the wild, creating a unique ecosystem where horses, cattle, wolves, bears, and dozens of other species lived in carefully managed harmony. The research conducted here had already revolutionized understanding of animal intelligence and social behavior. But nothing in Dr. Rodriguez's 15 years of research had prepared her for what she was about to witness between two particular residents. Atlas, a massive Angus bull, and Spirit, a wild mustang mare. Atlas had arrived at the station 3 years earlier as a calf, rescued from a factory farm where he had been destined for an industrial feeding operation. Unlike the docile cattle typically found in commercial agriculture, Atlas had retained much of the intelligence and independence of his wild ancestors. At nearly 2,000 pounds and 6 feet tall at the shoulder, he was an imposing figure with jet black hide and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to assess everything around him with careful consideration. Spirit, on the other hand, was a living piece of American history. The 12-year-old Mustang mare had been captured during a controversial Bureau of Land Management roundup in Nevada's remote Granite Range. Born free on the open range, Spirit had spent her first 8 years running wild with a band of Mustangs descended from horses brought to America by Spanish conquistadors centuries earlier. Her rescue story was both tragic and remarkable. During the roundup, Spirit had suffered a severe leg injury that left her with a permanent limp, making her unsuitable for adoption through the BLM's adoption program. Facing euthanization, she had been rescued by Harmony Station, where Dr. Rodriguez hoped to study how domestic animals could help wild ones adapt to captivity. For 2 years after Spirit's arrival, she and Atlas had maintained a respectful distance from each other. The mare spent most of her time in the upper meadows, close to the tree line, where she could survey the entire valley below. Atlas preferred the lower pastures near the research station, where he had established himself as the unofficial leader of a small group of rescued cattle. Their habitats overlapped at a natural, spring-fed pond that served as the primary water source for the northern section of the reserve. It was here in the shadow of a 300-foot coastal redwood that researchers had nicknamed the grandfather, that the two animals would occasionally encounter each other during their daily routines. The initial interactions were typical of what animal behaviorists would expect: polite indifference. Atlas would drink from one side of the pond while Spirit approached from the other. They would acknowledge each other's presence with brief glances, then go about their business without further interaction. Dr. Rodriguez and her research team had documented these encounters as part of their ongoing study of territorial behavior among different species. Graduate student Michael Chen had been assigned to monitor the pond area using motion-activated cameras and had accumulated hundreds of hours of footage showing the predictable, unremarkable coexistence of the two animals. But something had been changing in recent weeks, something so subtle that it had almost escaped the attention of the research team. Atlas had begun spending more time near the pond, even when he wasn't thirsty. He would graze nearby, occasionally glancing toward the tree line, where Spirit often appeared. Spirit, meanwhile, had begun descending from her preferred elevated positions more frequently, sometimes making multiple trips to the pond area in a single day. Her behavior suggested she was no longer simply coming for water, but seemed to be waiting for something. The first clear sign that something unusual was developing came on a foggy Tuesday morning in October. Dr. Rodriguez was reviewing overnight footage from the pond cameras when she noticed something that made her rewind the recording and watch it again, then call her entire research team to the observation room. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the timestamp showing 6:47 a.m. Atlas approaches the pond for his morning drink. Normal behavior. But watch what happens when Spirit comes down from the ridge. The team watched as the mustang mare descended toward the pond, but instead of approaching from her usual side, she walked directly toward Atlas. The bull, rather than moving away as he typically did when other animals approached him while drinking, remained perfectly still. Spirit stopped about 10 feet from Atlas and did something that made Dr. Rodriguez's pulse quicken with excitement. The mare lowered her head in what equine behaviorists recognized as a gesture of respect and submission, extraordinary behavior for a wild mustang approaching a bull. But Atlas's response was even more remarkable. The massive bull turned away from the water and approached Spirit, stopping just a few feet from her. For nearly 5 minutes, the two animals stood facing each other in what could only be described as a conversation conducted entirely through body language. "I've been studying animal behavior for 20 years, Dr. Rodriguez told her team, and I've never seen anything like this. These two species don't naturally interact in the wild. There's no evolutionary precedent for this kind of deliberate communication between cattle and horses." Graduate student Sarah Kim raised her hand. Could it be territorial behavior? Maybe they're establishing boundaries? Dr. Rodriguez shook her head. "Watch their postures. There's no tension, no dominance displays. If anything, they look like they're planning something." The recording continued to show Atlas and Spirit maintaining their unusual conference for several more minutes, before Spirit suddenly looked toward the eastern ridge, and Atlas turned his attention to the research station buildings below. Whatever they had been communicating about, it seemed to have reached a conclusion. Over the following days, the research team began documenting increasingly frequent and deliberate interactions between Atlas and Spirit. The two animals had developed what could only be described as a friendship, something that challenged everything the scientific community understood about interspecies relationships. But Dr. Rodriguez had no idea that this friendship was about to be tested in a way that would not only shock the scientific world, but would reveal levels of animal intelligence and empathy that most researchers believed impossible. Have you ever witnessed animals from different species forming unexpected friendships? Do you think animals are capable of the kind of deliberate communication that Dr. Rodriguez observed? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The crisis began on a chilly November morning when ranch hand Jake Martinez arrived for his routine feeding rounds and discovered that Atlas was nowhere to be found. The massive bull, who was as reliable as clockwork in his daily patterns, had simply vanished from the lower pastures where he spent every night. Dr. Rodriguez was immediately contacted, and within an hour she had organized a search team that included her graduate students, the ranch staff, and several volunteers from the local community. Atlas wore a GPS tracking collar, but the signal had mysteriously gone dead sometime around midnight. "Bulls don't just disappear," Jake told Dr. Rodriguez as they stood in Atlas's usual resting area, looking for clues. "Especially not Atlas. That animal has more sense than most people I know." The search team spread out across the 500-acre reserve, checking every pasture, ravine, and wooded area where a 2,000-pound bull might be found. Hours passed with no sign of Atlas, and Dr. Rodriguez began to worry that something terrible had happened to one of her most important research subjects. It was Michael Chen who first spotted the commotion near the eastern boundary of the reserve. "Dr. Rodriguez," he called over his radio, "you need to get up to the North Ridge immediately. I think I found Atlas, but something's wrong." Dr. Rodriguez and Sarah Kim quickly made their way up the steep trail that led to the ridge overlooking the Eel River Valley. What they found there would change their understanding of animal intelligence forever. Atlas was trapped. During the night, the massive bull had somehow wandered into an area where heavy autumn rains had caused a section of hillside to give way, creating a natural sinkhole about 15 feet deep and 12 feet across. The walls were too steep and muddy for Atlas to climb out, and the GPS collar had been damaged when he fell, explaining why the signal had been lost. But the truly extraordinary part of the scene wasn't Atlas's predicament. It was what Spirit was doing about it. The wild mustang mare was standing at the edge of the sinkhole, pacing back and forth in obvious distress. When she saw the human rescue team approaching, her behavior became even more remarkable. Spirit left the edge of the sinkhole and ran directly toward Dr. Rodriguez, something the usually wary mare had never done before. The horse stopped just a few feet from the scientist and began a series of behaviors that left no doubt about her intentions. She would run toward Dr. Rodriguez, then back toward the sinkhole, then toward the humans again, all while vocalizing with urgent whinnies and snorts. When the humans didn't immediately follow, Spirit became more insistent, actually nudging Dr. Rodriguez with her muzzle and pulling at her jacket with her teeth. "She's trying to lead us to Atlas," Sarah Kim observed in amazement. "She's asking for help. If this incredible story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, please give us a like. Your support helps us share more amazing animal stories like this one. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss these heartwarming tales that prove animals are far more intelligent than we ever imagined." Dr. Rodriguez was documenting everything with her field camera, knowing that the scientific community would need extensive proof of what they were witnessing. The idea that a wild horse would actively seek human assistance to help a bull was so far outside normal animal behavior that it challenged fundamental assumptions about animal cognition. "Michael," Dr. Rodriguez called to her graduate student, "get the rescue equipment from the truck. Sarah, start setting up the camera for continuous recording. I want every second of this documented." As the rescue team began assembling their equipment, Spirit's behavior became even more remarkable. The mare positioned herself between the humans and the sinkhole, watching every action closely as if supervising the rescue operation. When Jake Martinez brought out the heavy ropes that would be used to extract Atlas, Spirit approached and actually sniffed the equipment as if assessing whether it would be adequate for the job. When Dr. Rodriguez began explaining the rescue plan to her team, Spirit moved closer, tilting her head and appearing to listen to the conversation. Atlas, meanwhile, remained remarkably calm for an animal in such a precarious situation. The bull was standing in muddy water at the bottom of the sinkhole, but he showed no signs of panic or desperation. When he saw Spirit at the edge above him, he would make low, rumbling vocalizations that seemed to be acknowledgments of her presence. "It's like he knows she went for help," Sarah observed. "He's just waiting patiently because he trusts her to solve the problem." The rescue operation took nearly 3 hours to complete safely. Atlas had to be sedated to prevent injury during the extraction, and it required a portable crane borrowed from the local fire department to lift the massive bull out of the sinkhole. Throughout the entire operation, Spirit never left her supervisory position. She watched every detail of the rescue with an intensity that suggested she understood exactly what was happening and why it was necessary. The most extraordinary moment came when Atlas was finally lifted clear of the sinkhole and gently lowered onto solid ground. As soon as the bull was conscious and able to stand, Spirit approached him and performed what could only be described as an inspection, walking around Atlas and using her muzzle to check for injuries. Satisfied that her friend was unharmed, Spirit then did something that brought tears to the eyes of everyone present. She gently nuzzled Atlas's massive head, and the bull responded by leaning into her touch, a gesture of gratitude that transcended species boundaries. Dr. Rodriguez knew she had witnessed something unprecedented in the annals of animal behavior research. Not only had Spirit recognized that Atlas needed help, but she had actively sought human assistance and had supervised the rescue operation to ensure its success. "In 30 years of animal research," Dr. Rodriguez told her team as they watched Atlas and Spirit walking side by side back toward their usual grazing areas, "I've never seen anything that demonstrates this level of problem-solving, empathy, and interspecies communication." The footage from that day would soon make its way to animal behavior experts around the world, sparking debates about animal consciousness, intelligence, and emotional capacity that would continue for years to come. But Dr. Rodriguez had no idea that this remarkable rescue was only the beginning of a story that would fundamentally change how science understood the capabilities of animal minds. Do you believe animals are capable of complex problem-solving and seeking help from other species? Have you ever seen animals display what seemed like genuine empathy for others? Share your experiences in the comments. Word of the remarkable rescue spread through the scientific community faster than wildfire. Within 48 hours of the incident, Dr. Rodriguez's preliminary report had been shared among animal behaviorists, cognitive scientists, and veterinary experts across multiple continents. The implications of what had been witnessed at Harmony Station were staggering. Dr. Jonathan Hartwell, a leading expert in animal cognition from Harvard University, arrived at the research station just 3 days after the rescue. He brought with him a team of specialists, including Dr. Priya Patel, a renowned neuroscientist, and Dr. Marcus Thompson, who had spent decades studying horse behavior in the wild. Elena, Dr. Hartwell said as he reviewed the footage for the fifth time, if this documentation is accurate, and I have no reason to doubt it is, then we're looking at cognitive abilities in these animals that we previously thought were exclusive to great apes and dolphins. The visiting team set up advanced monitoring equipment to study both Atlas and Spirit more intensively. They used infrared cameras to track the animals' movements, installed sophisticated audio recording devices to capture their vocalizations, and even employed experimental brain scanning technology to monitor neural activity during their interactions. What they discovered over the following weeks revolutionized understanding of animal intelligence. The research revealed that Atlas and Spirit had developed a complex communication system that went far beyond simple body language. They used specific vocalizations, positioning, and even manipulated objects in their environment to convey different meanings to each other. Dr. Patel's neural monitoring showed that both animals displayed heightened activity in brain regions associated with planning and problem-solving when they were interacting. These are the same neural patterns we see in humans when they're engaged in strategic thinking, she explained to the fascinated research team. But perhaps the most groundbreaking discovery came when the scientists realized that the rescue incident had not been an isolated event. Review of months of previous camera footage revealed that Atlas and Spirit had been engaged in what could only be described as collaborative problem-solving for weeks before the sinkhole incident. The team discovered evidence of at least 6 separate occasions when the two animals had worked together to address various challenges around the research station. They had cooperated to access water sources during a drought, had jointly removed a fallen tree branch that was blocking a trail they both used, and had even appeared to coordinate their movements to help other animals in the reserve. What we're seeing here isn't just intelligence, Dr. Thompson explained during a video conference with colleagues around the world. We're seeing evidence of theory of mind, the ability to understand that other beings have thoughts, feelings, and needs different from your own. This is cognitive territory that science has never documented in cattle or horses. The research team's most ambitious experiment came in the 4th week of their study. They decided to create a controlled situation to test whether Atlas and Spirit's problem-solving abilities could be replicated under scientific conditions. Dr. Rodriguez designed what she called the Valley Challenge, a series of obstacles and puzzles placed in the Salmon Creek Canyon, a narrow ravine that ran through the heart of the research station. The goal was to see if Atlas and Spirit could work together to navigate complex problems when their usual pathways were blocked. The challenge was set up like an elaborate maze. Researchers placed boulders to block certain paths, created water barriers that could only be crossed at specific points, and even installed gates that required precise manipulation to open. Hidden cameras were positioned throughout the canyon to record every detail of how the animals approached these artificial obstacles. The results exceeded every expectation. Atlas and Spirit approached the challenge methodically, almost like human engineers surveying a construction site. They spent nearly an hour at the entrance to the canyon, apparently communicating about strategy before making any moves. When they began tackling the obstacles, their coordination was remarkable. Spirit's agility and sure footing allowed her to scout ahead and identify the best routes, while Atlas's strength enabled him to move heavy obstacles that blocked their path. At one point in the challenge, they encountered a gate mechanism that could only be opened by simultaneous action from both animals. Spirit had to push a lever with her nose while Atlas lifted a heavy counterweight with his massive shoulders. Without any human guidance or training, the two animals figured out the mechanism and executed the coordinated action perfectly on their 3rd attempt. This level of collaborative problem-solving represents a quantum leap in our understanding of animal cognition, Dr. Hartwell reported to the National Science Foundation. These animals are demonstrating abilities that we've never documented outside of human and great ape populations. The research team's findings were published in multiple peer-reviewed journals simultaneously, creating an unprecedented sensation in the scientific community. The paper titled Interspecies Collaborative Cognition, Evidence of Advanced Problem-Solving in Bovine Equine Partnerships, became the most downloaded animal behavior research paper in academic history. But the scientific revelations were only part of the story. News of Atlas and Spirit's remarkable abilities had begun to reach the general public, and the response was overwhelming. Harmony Research Station was flooded with requests from filmmakers, journalists, and animal lovers who wanted to witness the incredible partnership firsthand. Dr. Rodriguez found herself fielding calls from major television networks, National Geographic, and even representatives from several major universities who wanted to establish satellite research programs. The attention, while validating, also brought unexpected challenges. Dr. Rodriguez was concerned about maintaining the natural environment that had allowed Atlas and Spirit's relationship to flourish while accommodating the legitimate scientific interest their story had generated. "We have to remember," she told her team during one of their evening meetings, "that Atlas and Spirit aren't performers. They're individuals who deserve respect and privacy. Our job is to study and protect them, not exploit them." As the research continued, it became clear that the bond between Atlas and Spirit was still deepening. They had begun engaging in what Dr. Patel described as play behavior, activities that served no apparent survival purpose, but seemed to bring them joy and strengthen their relationship. The scientists documented games where Spirit would hide behind trees and Atlas would search for her, problem-solving sessions where they would manipulate objects in their environment purely for the intellectual challenge, and extended periods of what could only be called conversation, where they would exchange vocalizations in complex patterns that suggested genuine communication. "We're not just witnessing intelligence," Dr. Rodriguez reflected as she watched Atlas and Spirit engage in one of their evening conversations beneath the towering redwoods. "We're witnessing friendship, curiosity, and emotional depth that forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the inner lives of animals." Have you ever observed animals engaging in behavior that seemed to show planning, empathy, or complex thinking? Do you think science has underestimated animal intelligence? Share your thoughts about what this discovery means for how we treat animals. 6 months after the initial rescue incident, Dr. Rodriguez and her team made a discovery that would fundamentally alter the course of animal cognitive research worldwide. It began with an observation so subtle that it almost escaped notice, but its implications would prove to be earth-shattering. Graduate student Sarah Kim was conducting routine behavioral observations when she noticed that Atlas and Spirit had begun creating what appeared to be art. Using rocks, fallen branches, and other natural materials available in their environment, the two animals had started arranging objects in deliberate patterns around their favorite resting spots. At first, the research team dismissed these arrangements as coincidental, perhaps the result of the animals moving objects while foraging or playing. But Dr. Kim's detailed documentation revealed something extraordinary. The patterns weren't random. They were intentional, sophisticated, and appeared to convey meaning. "Look at this progression," Dr. Kim showed her colleagues, displaying photographs taken over several weeks. They started with simple circles made of stones around the base of their favorite tree. Then they began adding lines radiating outward like a sun. Now they're creating increasingly complex geometric patterns. Dr. Rodriguez called in Dr. Rebecca Foster, an expert in animal creativity from the University of California, Berkeley, who had spent years studying artistic expression in primates and marine mammals. Dr. Foster's assessment was groundbreaking. "What we're seeing here exhibits all the hallmarks of intentional artistic creation," Dr. Foster explained during her first visit to Harmony Station. "The patterns show planning, aesthetic sense, and symbolic thinking. These animals aren't just intelligent, they're expressing themselves creatively." The revelation that Atlas and Spirit were creating art sparked international attention from fields far beyond animal behavior research. Art historians, anthropologists, and philosophers descended on the research station to witness and study what many were calling the first documented case of non-human artistic expression in domesticated animals. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a cognitive anthropologist from Oxford University, brought equipment to analyze the mathematical properties of the patterns Atlas and Spirit were creating. Her findings were astounding. "These patterns aren't just random arrangements," Dr. Vasquez reported. "They follow mathematical principles found in nature: the golden ratio, Fibonacci sequences, fractal patterns. It's as if these animals have an intuitive understanding of mathematical beauty." The artistic creations were just the beginning. As the research team continued their observations, they discovered that Atlas and Spirit had developed what could only be described as a teaching relationship. Spirit had begun showing Atlas techniques for accessing food sources that required agility and precise hoof placement, skills that came naturally to a horse but were challenging for a bull. In return, Atlas was teaching Spirit how to use his strength and weight to solve problems that were beyond her physical capabilities. Most remarkably, they had begun teaching these skills to other animals in the reserve. The research team documented sessions where Atlas and Spirit would work together to show younger cattle how to navigate difficult terrain, demonstrate to horses how to work collaboratively, and even teach interspecies communication techniques to animals who had never interacted across species lines before. We're witnessing the emergence of what can only be called a culture, Dr. Rodriguez explained to a gathering of the world's leading animal cognition experts who had come to observe the phenomenon firsthand. These animals are not just solving problems, they're developing and transmitting knowledge to others. The implications were staggering. If animals could create culture, teach complex skills, and express themselves artistically, then the fundamental assumptions about consciousness, creativity, and intelligence would need to be completely reconsidered. Dr. Patricia Chen, a leading expert in animal consciousness from MIT, spent 3 months at Harmony Station conducting the most comprehensive study of animal cognition ever attempted. Her research involved advanced brain imaging, behavioral analysis, and even experimental protocols designed to test abstract thinking abilities. The neural activity we're recording from both Atlas and Spirit shows patterns that we previously associated only with highly advanced cognitive function, Dr. Chen reported. They're not just thinking, they're thinking about thinking. They demonstrate metacognition at levels we've never documented in any species outside of great apes and cetaceans. The breakthrough that shocked scientists most came during an experiment designed to test the animal's understanding of symbolic representation. Dr. Chen created a series of symbols that could be manipulated to represent different concepts: food, water, danger, friendship. Within weeks, Atlas and Spirit had not only learned to recognize and use these symbols, but had begun creating new ones to represent concepts that hadn't been included in the original system. They developed symbols for time concepts, past, present, and future. They created representations for emotional states, happiness, sadness, curiosity. Most incredibly, they began using symbols to refer to absent individuals, demonstrating an understanding of identity and memory that astonished the research team. They're not just communicating about immediate needs, Dr. Chen explained. They're having conversations about abstract concepts, sharing memories, and even making plans for future activities. The scientific community was forced to confront uncomfortable questions about the ethical implications of their findings. If animals possess such advanced cognitive abilities, what did that mean for how they should be treated? What rights should beings capable of art, culture, and abstract thought possess? Dr. Rodriguez found herself at the center of a global debate that extended far beyond scientific circles. Animal rights advocates, philosophers, legal experts, and ethicists all looked to the research at Harmony Station for guidance on questions that humanity had never seriously considered before. Atlas and Spirit have given us a gift that goes far beyond scientific knowledge, Dr. Rodriguez reflected during a presentation to the United Nations Committee on Animal Welfare. They've shown us that intelligence, creativity, and consciousness exist in forms we never imagined. They've challenged us to expand our understanding of what it means to be a thinking, feeling being. The research station became a pilgrimage site for scientists, students, and curious individuals from around the world. Special viewing areas were constructed to allow visitors to observe Atlas and Spirit without disturbing their natural behaviors, and the facility began offering educational programs designed to share the implications of the groundbreaking research. Years later, as Dr. Rodriguez watched Atlas and Spirit engaged in one of their artistic collaborations, creating an intricate spiral pattern from river stones that seemed to capture the very essence of their extraordinary friendship, she reflected on how two rescued animals had fundamentally changed humanity's understanding of the natural world. Science often progresses through unexpected discoveries, she told a group of visiting students. But rarely do those discoveries come with such profound implications for how we see ourselves and our place in the community of living beings. Atlas and Spirit continued to thrive at Harmony Station, their remarkable partnership serving as a bridge between species and a beacon of hope for those who believe that intelligence and consciousness were gifts to be celebrated wherever they appeared in nature. Their story had proven that the barriers between species were far more permeable than anyone had imagined, and that friendship, creativity, and intelligence could flourish in the most unexpected places when given the opportunity. The bull who had begged a horse for help had ultimately helped all of humanity discover something profound about the nature of consciousness itself. What do you think the discovery of advanced intelligence and creativity in animals should mean for how we treat them? How might Atlas and Spirit's story change the relationship between humans and animals in the future? Share your thoughts on this groundbreaking discovery in the comments below.